Well, good morning. My name is Rocky Moretti. Moretti is spelled Moretti, and I'm the Director of Policy and Research with TRIP. The format today is I'm going to present the findings of the report. We will then hear from John Ravitz, Executive Vice President of the Business Council of Westchester, and then following his remarks from John Cooney, Executive Director of the Construction Industry Council of Westchester and Hudson Valley. And then if you have questions, you can indicate through either there's a question signal on the message. You can indicate that you have a question, and my colleague Carolyn Kelly will then designate you as a panelist so that you can interact and ask your question. Turn your camera on if you choose to, and then we'll respond to those questions. TRIP as an organization was founded in 1971. We release in any given year probably 15 to 20 reports, mostly at the state level, but also national reports, really looking at surface transportation issues from the condition of the system's reliability, its impact on the economy, and also its impact on transportation safety. TRIP is supported by a coalition of manufacturing, insurance, construction, labor, and engineering organizations, and they look to us to put out reports on the condition of the transportation system. The report today, New York's Transportation by the Numbers, really looks at the most critical transportation numbers across the state. And we think the most critical numbers ultimately are the impact on the public. TRIP estimates that the cost to drivers in New York of driving on rough roads, of lost time due to traffic congestion, and also the economic cost of traffic safety are $28 billion annually. The TRIP report estimates that the average motorist in the New York metro area is losing $3,192 annually in the cost of operating vehicles on rough roads, which increase operating costs, the value of lost time and wasted fuel due to traffic congestion, and the economic cost of serious traffic crashes in which the lack of adequate roadway safety features were a contributing factor. The report points out that in New York, 26% of major roads have pavements in poor condition, and another 19% are rated in mediocre condition. The report finds that in the New York metro area, 44% of major roads have pavements in poor condition, and another 24% are rated in mediocre condition. We also looked at bridges and found that statewide, 10% of all bridges are rated as structurally deficient. These are bridges that, while still safe to remain open, are in immediate need of repairs and in some cases even replacement or reconstruction. In the New York metro area, the TRIP report finds that 7% of the region's bridges are rated structurally deficient and in need of repairs, and in some cases reconstruction or even replacement. We've watched closely as the New York state and metro area has been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And in the initial stages of the pandemic, travel in New York had decreased by 45%. The latest data from October shows that in New York, vehicle travel is 8% the level it was pre-COVID. So we're seeing this trend of transportation recovering, and certainly vehicle travel across the state getting back close to pre-pandemic levels. We also looked at traffic congestion and the recent trends in vehicle travel. And again, we're seeing traffic congestion, particularly in the evening, returning to pre-pandemic levels. The TRIP report estimates that the average commuter in the region spends an additional 92 hours annually stuck in traffic due to traffic congestion. And while they're doing that, they're wasting 38 gallons of fuel annually trying to get to the places they need to go. We also take a look very closely at traffic safety. And the TRIP report, based on a variety of research in the area, estimates that about a third of traffic fatalities, which include both motorists, but also pedestrians and bicyclists, that about a third of these can be attributed to some extent to the lack of adequate roadway safety features that would protect motorists and non-motorists alike. The TRIP report finds that on average, 600 people have been killed annually in vehicle traffic crashes in the New York metro area over the last 5 years. Again, these numbers include motorists, but also pedestrian and bicyclists. We know that when cost-effective roadway safety features are applied, it can go a long way to protecting everyone who's using our urban transportation systems. As the report points out, the transportation system is absolutely vital to the health of New York's economy, with approximately $1 trillion worth of goods being shipped to and from sites in New York State, the majority of them by trucks. And we anticipate, the latest data indicates over the next 25 years that the value and both the weight of these shipments will double across New York. As the report points out, looking into the future, we've seen two major impacts on the level of investment across the state. In New York, the state has been able to, over the last 3 years, to increase their overall investment in roads, highways, and bridges by 37%. Part of that has gone to some significant mega projects, but they have been able, but that has also freed up funding for the core system across the state. And we've also seen the passage at the federal level of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which has increased funding for roads, highways, and bridges in New York State by 52%. The federal program statewide is around 38% of the program. So you can see that both of these increases, both at the state and federal level, are absolutely vital in the New York metro area's ability and the state's ability to start to turn the ship around. What we've seen is that as infrastructure ages, that the simple repairs don't last as long as they once did, because they're oftentimes covering up more significant systematic problems within the system in terms of substructures or bridge supports. And so increasingly repairing our aging infrastructure will require these more costly, but in the long term, more effective repairs that are necessary. So in conclusion, there are significant costs to the public in the New York metro area of inadequate infrastructure. In this case, it's roads, highways, and bridges, but we are starting to see positive signs of additional funding becoming available to improve the condition of the system and also increase its reliability as well as its safety. So as we begin to turn this ship around, it'll be vital at the state and local level that governments continue to put a priority on making the infrastructure repairs that are necessary and providing the funding that will be required. We're now going to hear from John Ravitz, the Executive Vice President with the Business Council of Westchester.
Thank you very much, Rocky. Again, my name is John Ravitz. I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for the Business Council of Westchester. We're the county's largest business member organization that really focuses on economic development and advocacy. We have over 1,000 members, ranging from the multi-international companies that call Westchester home to the biotech firms that have really put Westchester on the map, to all the hospitals and universities, professional service firms in all different sectors, mid-sized and small businesses, non-for-profits, and solo entrepreneurs. And our mission really, when it comes to advocacy, is being the eyes, ears, and the voice for our members. And we have been very, very excited to partner with TRIP each year over these last few years to really talk about this report, which really is a document that every legislature on every level of government needs to focus on. As we rebound from this pandemic, as we look to encourage businesses to come to Westchester County and the Hudson Valley, as we look to retain businesses and hopefully help them grow their businesses in Westchester County and the Hudson Valley, we need to be able to show them that the priorities of having roads, bridges, and tunnels and overpasses in the county are being improved, are being safe, and that we don't have, as Rocky said, a reliability issue that really puts people's lives at risk. We always send the TRIP report each year to every member of the Westchester County Board of Legislators and to every member of the Westchester Assembly and State Senate delegation, because we want them to see that there's work that still needs to get done. As a former member of the New York State Assembly, my first question always was, yes, the work needs to get done, but is the funding there to pay for it? Well, we now know that the funding is there, that we now need to use that funding strategically to make the improvements in our transportation infrastructure so that we can send that clear message to the business community in Westchester and around the country, that if you do come here to open up shop, you are going to have safe roads, safe bridges, safe underpasses for your employees and also for your customers. So this report is vital to be able to come out now, right at the beginning of the legislative session, as we begin in Albany the budget negotiations. We will continue to be laser focused at the Business Council of Westchester to really continue to urge our elected officials to make sure that they are making this a priority. It is going to really be imperative that we continue to get the information that TRIP always supplies out to the key stakeholders so they understand that this issue is not going to be fixed in a day, but the work really needs to continue and be taken seriously. So again, I want to thank TRIP for their ongoing work that they have done. And now it's my pleasure to introduce a colleague of mine who does so much important work in Westchester County and the Hudson Valley, John Cooney, who's the Executive Director of the Construction Industry Council of Westchester and Hudson Valley. John?
Thank you, John, and thank you, Rocky, for this very putting together and presenting this very important report. My name is John Cooney Jr. I am the Executive Director of the Construction Industry Council of Westchester and the Hudson Valley. We represent approximately 600 members who do work, all types of infrastructure and building work across the Hudson Valley. And in total, with the employees that are employed there and the unions that we partner with, we really represent about 30,000 households in the Hudson Valley. The TRIP report points out, many things relative to the condition of New York State's infrastructure, but in the Hudson Valley, the deteriorated conditions of the Hudson Valley, its regions, New York's roads and bridges cost drivers an additional $1,839 a year in vehicle operating costs. The costs are a combination of operating costs, safety, and congestion costs. Statewide, across the state, for all drivers in the state, when you total all of those drivers, it equals $28 billion of additional cost. For the year ended in 2020, in the Hudson Valley, 58.5% of the roads were rated poor and fair condition, the highest percentage in the state. In addition, 45.9% of the region's bridges were rated poor and fair condition, also the highest in the state. Investment in New York State's roads and bridges are an investment in the health of its general economy. As pointed out in the study, over $1 trillion of goods are shipped to and from sites within New York. Further, the American Road and Transportation Builders Association reports that there are 319,000 full-time jobs involved with the design, construction, and maintenance of New York's transportation infrastructure. As pointed out in the study, New York State's annual investment in roads and bridges has increased by $1.7 billion, or 37% over the past 4 years, from 2018 to 2021. One could ask, why have conditions not improved with this increased investment? I believe the answer is the increased investment is catching up for years of underinvestment, stabilizing conditions, and laying the foundation for improvement in the future. Further, in 2021, we saw an increased focus by New York State DOT on local roads and bridges. In November of last year, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA, a federal piece of legislation, was signed into law by President Biden. The piece of legislation represents a generational increase in infrastructure spending across the United States. For New York State, the IIJA represents a 52% increase in federal aid for roads and bridges over a 5-year period, on approximately moving the federal investment from $1.8 billion historically to $2.7 billion annually over the next 5 years. The Construction Industry Council and the entire New York construction industry are confident that Governor Hochul, the New York Senate and Assembly, will use this increased federal funding to make an incremental increase and spending on New York's roads and bridges that will drive real improvement in the condition of roads and bridges in the Hudson Valley, as well as across the entire state of New York. And again, I thank Tripp very much for the time and effort putting this study together that points out the simple fact that the traveling public and the public at whole in New York State deserve improved conditions with their transportation. Thank you.
Thank you to both Johns, and I'll let Carolyn go ahead and if there's any questions, we can wait a couple of minutes, and if there's any questions, then Carolyn can bring you up to the panel so that we can answer those questions.
Sure. Thanks, Rocky, and thank you, John and John, for your remarks. I do see one question from Carolyn Gussoff. So Carolyn, I will promote you to a panelist, and you should be able to ask your question live. So if you unmute yourself, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, thank you. Carolyn Gussoff, WCBS TV. I cover Long Island, so I'll be focused on, the New York City and Long Island area. But my question is, the infusion of funds from the federal government, it sounds to me like while the money is coming, you're not confident it will be earmarked to the right projects. What is the concern about the use of this sudden infusion of money? Is there, some doubt that it will be used to go to the right projects?
I think.
Yeah, go ahead, Rocky.
Sure. Yeah, I can sort of answer that, from sort of a broader perspective, and then John can add more details. No, I think we certainly, Tripp, I think, as any transportation organization, is very encouraged by this significant boost in funding. It begins in this fiscal year. And so certainly transportation agencies across the country are looking at the stream of projects that they'd anticipated on and seeing where the additional resources are going to go. So we do think it is going to give a boost to funding. It will fall into the traditional projects that the New York Department of Transportation had programmed. So we do think these additional funds are going to be critical. They're going to provide additional funds for what we refer to as sort of not only the core projects of improving the condition of roads, highways, and bridges, but also allowing some of the other larger projects that are critically needed to move forward.
And, a specific, in the governor's state of the state, there was a reference made that there would be an increased investment in New York Bridge, the New York Bridge program, and the New York Roads program, which are money that gets distributed to take care of the local network. Just in that state of the state, that would make you think that much of this additional investment would go to the core assets that need this maintenance. But there's always a balance. There are other key or larger projects that need to be performed to help the economic region, the economic performance of a region. So it's always a gentle balance. But no, we believe that this increased money, the key is that it'd be an incremental investment, that the state of New York and any state in the union take this additional money and put it to work, not lessen their effort, continue their effort, and make the money that comes from the federal government incremental.
And Carolyn, I think the point that I made earlier really speaks to this new federal dollars, and in this case, additional state dollars, is that increasingly transportation agencies are recognizing that the smaller repairs are increasingly less cost effective, because you've got so many problems with roads and highways in terms of their sub-bases and bridges with a lot of their supporting infrastructure, that increasingly we'll see a lot of this money channeled into more significant, larger reconstruction projects. They're absolutely critical, but they certainly are going to take additional resources. So the additional state and federal money are both very critical to this, but certainly, allow progress. But increasingly, we're going to have to be funding some very significant projects moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. If there are any other questions, you can go ahead and either use the raise hand function, or you can submit your question to the chat. We'll give it another minute or so while we wait for any other questions to come in. I'll also note that the full report, as well as the news releases for each of the areas that are covered in the report, is up on the TRIP website right now at tripnet, tripnet.org. We'll also have a recording of this news conference up there in the next half an hour or so. So if you'd like to get the recording of the news conference as well, that will also be available. I don't see any other questions that have come in. So Rocky, if you'd like to go ahead and wrap things up.
Okay, well, again, thanks to our speakers and for everyone who took the time to tune in. And of course, TRIP will be available throughout the day for any follow-up questions or individual interviews. And with that, we'll conclude today's news conference. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.